Okay. Hello, everyone. Thank you for waiting. As you can see, we are joined tonight with Dr. Anthony Chaffee. Just a brilliant guy. It's just an absolute honor to have him join us tonight. So we will be try and get to any questions that you might have. Please put a Q in front of it if you have it. And we'll try and get on the agenda of a lot of questions around carnivore, especially for alternative treatments or just helping people get through cancer and whatever treatments they are going through right now. So we'll get started. Okay.
Yeah. So I was just going to say, it's not giving me the option to share this on YouTube either, as well. So if you wanted me to do that, it might be a permission you have to give me.
Okay. How we do that? Source. No. Comment spanners brand. Okay, I can't see an option for that. Let's see. Yeah, I can't see an option for that actually. No. All right, we'll just kick it off anyway.
Yeah, of course.
Okay. All right, so the first question, like I said before, I've got to ask a question for JT. JT will help me if I don't ask you. Mm-hmm. Are you committed to doing the carnivore calendar?
Yeah, it's I've meant to sort of get some pictures done for that, so I have to do that. But yeah, I'm happy to do that.
Okay, so there you go, ladies. Then JT, I know you'd be very concerned about doing the carnivore calendar. He's getting photos done for that. Excellent, very good. All right. So when it comes to let's start with cancer, because that's what my channel is mostly about. There's a lot of, there's obviously a lot of concerns people have around carnivore diet because of, well, just education, propaganda, and everything else that goes with it. The nutrition. Now, for me, being stage 4 follicular lymphoma twice, and still carrying that with me, one of my key concerns is my lymphatic system, keeping that healthy, so that so what I basically do, well, what I love about the carnivore diet is make sure that I have clean fats. Now, this to me, obviously this is what's keeping me healthy. It's like a vitamin shot as far as I'm concerned. Because it the lymph fluid gets pushed around the body through activity, of course, but of course you have to feed it the right fats. Like seed oils, vegetable oils, all these that actually started life as machine oils and things like that. We're just not getting any nutrition from, obviously, and worse, more like poison than anything. So the concerns a lot of people have with just eating meat, though, obviously the cholesterol lie. So can you give us a bit of information, like how that would affect? Am I on the right track with eating fats for the lymphatic system, and is cholesterol going to be a problem?
No, cholesterol is definitely not a problem. That was a scapegoat from the sugar industries. The sugar companies were a bit worried because there were studies coming out showing that there was a pretty strong correlation between increased refined sugar consumption and heart disease rates. And so they needed to cover this up. And they even said that in their own memos that were published in the Journal of American Medical Association in 2016. And so they launched a multi-decade campaign, it's probably still going on, to vilify cholesterol, vilify saturated fat, and paint this as the culprit, when it was strongly correlated with sugar. It's also strongly correlated with seed oils, as you mentioned. And so they paid off various professors throughout the 20th century, probably still paying off many people as well. And those professors were paid to falsify data and publish fraudulent studies to make it appear as if cholesterol caused heart disease. And this was, this is just bought and paid for corrupt work. One of those professors was from Harvard, and he was named head of the USDA. And he was the one who authored and published the 1977 USDA declaration saying that cholesterol caused heart disease. And so that was sort of a nail in the coffin for this argument. It was hotly debated for 40 years before that. And that was sort of it as far as heart disease was concerned. It was appealing to authority. The teacher said so, therefore it must be true. And it didn't matter what evidence you had or what arguments and logic you could use. The case was closed as far as the majority of people were concerned. And so that was a known fraud that was published in the Journal of the American Medical Association in 2016, JAMA, their actual internal memo showing this. So we have the tobacco memos, the tobacco files, where they showed that they actually knew that tobacco was very harmful and addictive, and strongly linked to cancer, probably caused cancer. And they covered it up and denied it and said, oh, well, we don't know that. Our studies show everything's great. And they were knowingly lying and perjured themselves in front of Congress. To me, that's really criminal at that point. They knowingly were putting a dangerous product on the market that they know was causing harm, that they know was killing people and making them very sick. So how is that not a criminal act? So now we have the sugar files. We have these documents from the sugar companies showing that they did the same. They perpetrated the same fraud on the American people, and then all throughout the world after that, everyone took up the mantle of the U.S., unfortunately. And so, no, saturated fat is not a problem. We've been eating it for a very, very long time. It's very interesting. The amount of saturated fat that we've been eating really hasn't changed much, sort of gone up and down, but it's pretty flat line. If anything is going down, animal fats in particular have gone down over the 20th century while heart disease is going up. So there's no correlation there. It's actually inversely related. And then if you're talking just overall saturated fat, because obviously there's saturated fat in plant oils as well, the saturated fat has sort of stayed pretty level. But again, heart disease is going up, diabetes is going up, but this is staying flat. So how is that causing that? It's not even correlated. Then you're talking about meat being a problem. Well, why would meat be a problem? We've been eating meat for millions of years. We've been apex predators for 2 million years. Apex predators are carnivores by definition. That's what that term means. So whatever's in meat, it's something that we're well adapted to. If there was something harmful in meat, which there isn't. The WHO has a whole webpage talking about natural toxins found in food. Every single one is from a plant, mushroom, or an algae. There isn't a single one that originated in meat. The only one you could say that would be close to that is algae that gets into seafood. Then you eat the seafood, but you're really getting the toxins from the algae. And so, obviously, you have animals that have poison sacs and things like that. But the meat itself doesn't need to be poisonous because they have different defenses, and especially the large animals. They don't need to be like a small poisonous frog or an insect that has a sting or something like that, because they can just sort of overpower most other animals.
Yeah.
So, 70% of animals in the world are carnivores. They're not all just dying of cancer and just falling over and everything like that. People talk about, David Sinclair from Harvard talks about how, well, maybe a carnivore diet can help you and improve your health in some ways, but maybe it's running the engine too fast. And maybe you burn out too quickly, and maybe you don't live as long. It's a lot of maybes. But then he says, well, what you'd want to do is you want to be more like a whale that has this long, slow burn and lives a very long time. I don't think that's the right analogy for Dr. Sinclair to use, simply because I don't think it's really illustrating the point that he wants it to, simply because all whales, every species of whale is a carnivore. So they're all eating meat. Every single one of them is saying, you should be like a whale. I agree, Dr. Sinclair. We should all be like whales and eat to our biological design and just eat meat. Meat is not harmful. And the cancer rates in whales is essentially 0. So, this is something that we see in humans and we see in domestic pets that are not being fed their natural biological diet. We see cancer, we see heart disease, we see diabetes and autoimmune disorders, we see arthritis and osteoporosis. I have yet to see a nature video of elephants walking down the Serengeti and just one of their hips snapping and they fall over. I'm like, oh, that's grandma. That doesn't happen. But it happens to us, and it happens to our pets when they're being fed something they shouldn't eat. And so it's just a simple idea. You go back to eating what you're designed to eat, what you're biologically designed to eat, what we've been eating throughout the entire existence of humanity, and your body's going to work the way it's supposed to work. It's pretty simple.
Yeah, I completely agree. For me, I'm not sure. I mean, stop me if I'm wrong here, but the key to me is the lymphatic system. I think that obviously, all your vitamins, minerals, fat soluble vitamins and minerals, all your water soluble ones, all get digested and picked up in the lymph fluid, and then get pushed around the body to, including your proteins and collagen to the bones, everything like that. So obviously, the optimal diet is going to, obviously going to treat everything a lot healthier because that all gets carried through the lymph fluid to everywhere, every part of the body, including the brain, the heart, everything else. When it comes to like cholesterol, I had a great analogy the other day. It's like when they first tested this stuff, they basically just poured fat down a sink, and because because it's cold water, it just clogged up. Obviously, if fat cools down, obviously it's going to clog the sink. But when does your body cool down? If your body was that cold, you'd be dead anyway, wouldn't you? Plus, it all just gets broken down into lymph fluid anyway. So it's by the time it's in that lymph fluid, it's no ways it can clog anything. How would it get to your heart? So
no, it's completely made up.
Yeah,
it's completely made up. You have chylomicrons. They take these things in that transport fat around the system. Fat is so important that you have 5 organs all working in concert just to absorb it. You have your stomach starts breaking it down. Your liver makes bile. Your gallbladder stores the bile. Your pancreas makes lipase and other enzymes to break it down, and then your small intestine absorbs the emulsified compound of fat and bile, and then it goes through your lymphatic system. It doesn't even go through your portal venous system to your liver. People say, oh, all this fat is hard on your liver. Fat doesn't go through your liver. Fat is the only thing that doesn't go through your liver. It gets picked up by your lymphatics and gets put straight into your systemic circulation because your body says, this is really important, get it in. Everything else goes through your liver and is usually processed to turn into fat, because that's what we're going for here. That's our storage molecule. That is our primary energy source. And so if you're just getting fat, your body says, yeah, just take it in. Now, other things can sneak in like a Trojan horse, like the seed oils and all these other sorts of, tons of omega-6s and things like that come in linoleic acid in plant oils. And they're rancid and they're oxidized, but they can come in through that fat absorption system that we have in place, probably because we've never in the history of our biology come across this stuff before. It's brand new. It's 100 years old. Some seed oils are more recent than that, and so our biology has just not had time to adapt. And so when our body sees fat, it says, good, bring it in you. And now we have other fats like trans fats and seed oils and all these sorts of things that are quite harmful, but they're getting taken in like a Trojan horse. So if fat were so bad, why would we have all those systems in place just to absorb it? Why would it be that that we wouldn't just stop one of those things. If one of those organ systems just stops doing their job to absorb fat, it all breaks down and you don't absorb any fat. And so if our body didn't want fat, if it wasn't good for us, we wouldn't have all those systems working in concert in order to digest it and absorb it. So it doesn't make any sense. It doesn't even pass the smell test. We've been eating fat and meat forever. And the thing is too, is, if you're looking at correlations, correlation doesn't prove causation. But if you show that there is no correlation, then that shows there's no causation. That proves there's no causation. And so we talk about meat and like, oh, well, we're eating more meat during the 20th century and heart disease rates are going up. Fine. Same with sugars, same with seed oils. But then you go back a century, because we have statistics, past before 1940. So the first heart attack recorded in America was in 1912. It was unheard of before that. And actually the guy who described it on autopsy was not believed. The scientific community, the medical community thought that he got it wrong or was making it up, because we'd never seen anything like that. That's not a thing. And it wasn't until about 10 years later that they started saying, well, okay, well, yeah, maybe there's something there. We're starting to see more of these things. And then it was another decade after that heart disease became the #1 killer. So heart attacks became the #1 killer in America. And so, it went from being non-existent, didn't believe the first person who described it in 1912, to being the #1 killer in 20 years. That was at the point, if you look back on a 200-year scale, that was the point in America where we were eating the least amount of meat in 200 years. The least amount of meat 100 years before and 100 years after. So it's sort of this U-shaped curve. So if you look at the chart, it goes back. So the beginning of the 1800s, it's actually quite high, as much or nearly about as much as we eat now. And then that sort of started coming down a little bit, down. But it was quite high in the 1800s, and it sort of slowly came down and troughed around the point where heart disease took off and became the #1 killer. And then it started to climb back up again. But for that whole century and a bit, 120, 130 years prior to that, in the 1800s, we were eating far more meat than we were the rest of the century. So, and there was no heart disease. There were no heart attacks. And people say, well, that's because people died in their 30s. Died of what? That's the thing. So, they died too soon and they didn't grow old enough to get heart disease. So what did they die of then? Did they die of heart disease? Did they die of cancer? You're saying that this food causes the disease and they're eating a lot of the food, so they must have been getting the disease and dying of the disease. Or what else were they dying from? They're just dying? You have to have an answer for that. And that's something that people don't come up with. And, that's the thing, people say that well, people eating meat, they were just dying really young, so they didn't have a chance to get all these chronic diseases. Well, what were they dying from then? Right? Okay, so from accidents, emergencies, predators, wars, yes. But does that mean that no one lived past 30? No one lived past 40? There was just not a single old person in the world? That's not true. People lived on average 38 years in 1850 from birth. And that's a very big difference. So people were living on average from birth until the 38 or something like that. That doesn't mean that's how long they were living if they died of old age. And so when infant mortality rates are 3 out of 5, you have to live a lot longer than that. The people that do survive have to live a hell of a lot longer than that in order to bring that up to 38, especially because there were a lot of other causes of death, and there were wars and famines and all these sorts of things that would kill a lot of people. And so it's not. It really
use those statistics.
Sorry?
That's why they use those statistics, though, because they know it doesn't balance out.
Yeah, well, they just don't. They don't think anyone's going to sort of look into it and check. They just sort of throw something out there and see if it sticks. There's people were dying in their 30s. No, they weren't. On average, from birth, it was the average life expectancy from birth was 38. but kids are dying. You have a lot of kids dying. And so that brings down the average. But that doesn't mean that that's how old people were dying when they died. And so a lot of people were actually dying much older than that, of old age, and we're not getting these chronic diseases. And either way, it's increasing decade after decade after decade in modern era, when we don't have those problems, and the life expectancy is actually going down in the last few years. And so this isn't this isn't something that you can hide behind, just by saying, oh, in the 1800s, we weren't living as long. Okay, well, we're doing fine now. We can see it now, and every decade these disease rates go up. And so you can't blame poor record keeping on that. You say, well, before 1990s, we weren't really paying attention. That's not true. It's completely untrue. But if it were true, why did it go up in the 1990s from the 1980s, and then 2000s, and then the 2010s, and now the 2020s is continuing to go up? We're having all these interventions. We have statins and different medications, and we're eating less meat, we're eating less fat, we're reducing cholesterol by every hook and crook, and yet things are getting worse. And then further dishonesty. There's multiple layers of dishonesty in people that you'll come across that are pushing this. And they'll say, well, and they'll try to switch the goalposts, and they'll say, well, actually, it has gotten better because deaths, cardiovascular deaths, peaked in the 1960s and 70s, and then started coming down after we started intervening on cholesterol. Okay, that's not what I said. I said the rate of heart disease is going up, the prevalence and incidence is going up, the amount of new heart attacks per year is going up, and that's the important thing. Just because we have better interventions and people have stopped smoking, and that's improving outcomes as well, and we have bypass surgery, we have stenting, we can pull out clots, we have early detection, we have all these different methods and measures that can prevent people from dying, have nothing to do with lowering cholesterol. It's the rates of heart disease are going up. More people are having heart attacks. More people are having first-time heart attacks. They're just surviving them. So what does that have to do with the cardiovascular death rate? That has nothing to do with that. And so, lowering cholesterol has not helped. At the very least, it could potentially have made it worse. It's correlated with worse outcomes. It's correlated with increased prevalence and incidence. Correlation is not causation, but it's certainly not the other way around. No. And so you can't say that it's improved things anyway.
No, of course not. Plus, there's a lot more emergency care available now too, which people get care a lot quicker now than they did back in the 60s as well, which is why people are surviving first-time heart attacks and things like that as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like that brings me to the next point. Like, let's go over some statistics. Like, we'll start with cancer, for example. You're talking about, the way they calculate deaths back in the 80s, that you had it from childhood, infant mortality. Now they calculate it differently. They usually go from adult life and just say, well, we're living much longer and all this sort of BS. But the number one killer in Australia for children overall, everything, accidents, or just whatever, is cancer.
Wow.
Yeah, which is insane.
Yeah, I did not know that.
Yeah, and I saw a lot of this while I was being treated. I had 3 solid years basically of chemotherapy. And I saw kids. I was staying at Leukemia Foundation. I saw kids going through treatment that, I was fit and strong. I could it was hard, but I managed to survive, obviously. But you see these children just are not strong enough to go through that sort of treatment. And the statistics for the last few years, the last 5 years in Australia, cancer has killed, actual deaths have been around, like 3 years ago with 48,000 last year was 51,000. And it seems a bit strange to me, but America, England, and Australia, the statistics seem they go up 3% year on year, exactly 3% year on year. It's very coincidental, I guess. But in some states in Australia this year, Western Australia, where you are at the moment, they predict a 5% increase due to things going on the last few years, I guess. Things are not getting better. They are only getting worse. I don't know how they can possibly say that medicine is improving the life or standard of living when in America, for example, there's 1,700 people dying of cancer every single day. Now, another thing that gets me is that they say they're dying of cancer. The biggest problem I find is the standard of care. I think most people are actually dying from the treatment rather than the disease. Would that be your take on that?
Well, it's certainly one of them. Yeah, I mean, chemo is extremely hard on the body. Radiation is very hard on the body, and people do die from complications of their treatment. And then it can also completely axe your immune system, especially chemotherapy and various chemotherapies, certain chemotherapies, and that leaves you open to opportunistic infections, and quite a lot of people with cancer die from infections, in fact. And long before the cancer invades and destroys the various organs that they're in to the point of dysfunction and death, they often die from infections or other sorts of systemic complications that their body can't overcome.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, obviously before I was diagnosed, my immune system was shot anyway. But after treatment, it was essentially zero. I couldn't go in. I pretty much lived in a bubble for 5.5 years, bedridden. And just traveling to and from the hospital, I'd get sick. I'd pick up a cold, and it would last me months. A flu would, like you said, would almost kill me. These small infections have just, they destroy you. When you're going through chemotherapy, especially heavy dose chemotherapy, and especially for prolonged periods. But the fats I have found, even if these seed oils and these so-called vegetable oils weren't so rancid, they still would not have the vitamins and minerals and proteins that we need for our lymphatic system to rebuild our bodies. This is something I've found that you've got to have animal fats to rebuild your body.
Yeah.
Would that be your take?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, there are essential fatty acids that only exist in animal fats. The omega-3s, people say, well, you can get omega-3s from plants, and that's fine, but there's different kinds. It's not just omega-3, it's omega-3s, plural. And yes, there are some omega-3 fatty acids that exist in plants, like alpha-linoleic acid, ALA, but that's not the one we need for our brain and nervous system. We have to have DHA and EPA, and we don't really make it very well ourselves. And you don't convert ALA into DHA or EPA. There's different accounts. Some people say you can convert some, and others say absolutely not. You can't convert any. So it's a point of contention. But even if you can convert some, it's going to be a very, very, very small amount, and likely or unlikely to meet your demands. 20% of your brain is DHA. It's a large component of your brain and nervous system. So you have to have that from animal fats. You can't get it from plants. And then the fat soluble vitamins like vitamin D3, vitamin K2, vitamin A, vitamin E. These are really really only found in meat, or really in their proper forms in meat, especially K2 and vitamin D3. You can get K1 and you can get D2, but those are the wrong molecules. Those aren't the ones that we need. We need D3 and we need K2. And so, we really can't convert these things into the proper vitamins. You really do need them in their proper form. And we see a lot of problems with that. I mean, even just crooked teeth, that's from generally vitamin K2 deficiency, but it can also be along with vitamin D3 and calcium. That's published in dentistry journals right now. And so, if you're able to get vitamin K2 from K1 in plants, then why is it that people are having such bad jaw and tooth development when they eschew meat and they avoid meat and they don't eat as much as they should or could? They're not getting it. They're not converting that into what they need. And they're suffering as a result of it. And sometimes that might be something just cosmetic, like your teeth are crooked, or your jaw doesn't form right, or your face doesn't form right, and you don't look the way that you were designed to look and that you could have looked. You have smaller jaw. People get massive reconstructive surgery to change and alter their face and extend their jaw so they don't have a sort of pinched in jaw. That's all, and that's all developmental, environmental.
Yeah.
People are not supposed to have really small jaws with crowded teeth. That's not normal. You don't find any jaws like that in pre-agricultural fossils. There's all big, strong, wide, straight jaws with straight, clean, healthy teeth that all have their wisdom teeth erupted and in the right form and place. So, none of us are developing properly, and in large part because we're simply not getting enough nutrients, and a lot of the fat soluble nutrients we've really lost out on, and they're very, very important. We don't get proper brain development unless you get the fatty acids that you need, and not even just DHA and EPA. There are very long chain fatty acids, 22 chain fatty acids that our brain has to have that we really can't make ourselves and do not exist in plants, and you don't convert even the longer chain fatty acids like you would find in coconut oil into the very long chain fatty acids. And either way, like the long chain, like the 18 chain fatty acids that you might find in coconut oil is actually a small percentage of the amount of fat that's in there. So you really do need this stuff from fat. You really do have to get it, especially when we're talking about kids, especially when we're talking about babies and children, fetuses with developing brains and nervous systems. You are going to restrict their development, and they're not going to be as tall or as smart or as athletic or as neurologically developed as they could have been if you don't give them the proper nutrition and exclude things that can deter and interrupt their proper development that you find in these defense chemicals in plants.
Yeah, no, yeah, exactly. That's what I've been thinking and trying to tell people too. You cannot get nutrients from plants because, one, the fiber content, the carb content, but we just cannot convert those vitamins. It was one of the things that it kills me now. That just the standard of care in hospitals. When I was being treated, I would literally watch people wheel their treatment trolley outside and have a cigarette, and I would be thinking, what the hell are you even there for? Like you're doing exactly what put you there. But at the same time, they're feeding us pretty much just like 100% carb diets. And you sit there, they actually literally almost force you to drink ginger ale and to keep your because of the ginger content, to try and settle your stomach so you don't vomit everywhere. But they're feeding you cookies, cakes, all sorts of things. The dietary advice, which at the time, even then, I knew it was BS because it was just after the treatment, IBS is very common. It was severe, and they put you on laxatives and a high fiber diet. Like that's going to help IBS. It's crazy to me. It really is. It's absolutely crazy. And I think that's what gave me such a short remission period too, because of the steroids and the diet. But since then, those 3 years, my brain was pretty much cooked. I mean, everything was cooked, my organs, everything like that. So I've been in remission 9.5, just over 9.5 years now.
Good.
Yeah. Like I had it twice in 2 years. I mean, well, I was stage 4 twice in 2 years, but from there, just when I was after the transplant, for example, because I had lost so much weight and I was pretty much unable to move for so long, I was craving meat. And I noticed then it just, like my body would soak it up like a sponge. And I didn't really connect the dots until much later, obviously. But when you're talking about development, the recovery rate has been amazing as well. Even the difference between last year, like for that 9 years or so, I was pretty much just ketogenic style. I just pretty much went back to a caveman. I still had carbs and fruit and veg and that sort of stuff, seasonal stuff, kind of like a dessert. But since going strict carnivore, and I know a lot of carnivores say this, they have this brain fog lift. For me, it's been much more than that. It's, after the treatments, I found it very difficult to have any kind of recall. My memory was shot. Like I could have a conversation with someone for hours, and as soon as they've gone, I'd forget they were even there. And I still can't remember ever seeing these people. But just being on carnivore, and I eat quite a lot of fat. About 70% of my diet is fat. My memory, my recall, my concentration, my ability has just increased and just keeps on getting better. It's an incredible difference, That to me has been one of the biggest things. I mean, it's fantastic to watch my blood markers go up. Which was, when I first started this, I figured, I stopped taking all those supplements and everything like that. And I figured I was either going to prove it or disprove it. And the first 3 months, my blood markers jumped between 8 and 10 points right across the board. Then the next blood test, all of my blood markers now are in a normal healthy range, and for me that's a miracle. It's fantastic. And it's not something I ever thought would be possible again. So it just proves to me that you're getting animal fats, I mean, I've always known you need protein, but the problem is the standard diet is lean proteins, carbohydrates, and it's limited fats, sort of limited sugars, sort of thing. But it's it just leads to rabbit starvation. And I think that even if you were taking fats like seed oils and all these sort of things, this would give you the same result, would it not? Like give you rabbit starvation, because you're just not getting the nutrients that your body needs.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. You do need the fat. The fat is an essential nutrient. So it's not enough to just get meat. You need the fat from the meat as well. And so if you're eating far too lean and you're getting a majority of your calories from protein, which means you're getting far less than 1 gram of fat per 1 gram of protein. So you're getting far, far less fat than you are protein. Yeah. Then that can actually cause harm and damage. If you're getting 1 gram of fat per 1 gram of protein, that ends up being about 70% calories from fat. And so you actually have to get a lot less fat as a measure of grams per gram of protein. And that's, it's just not it's just not possible to have optimal health that way.
Yeah.
So, there is something called rabbit starvation. People that were surviving on rabbits, people that were poor, sort of serf class, peasant class. And that's, that's something too. There's always the oligarchs and the aristocracy and the ruling elites that ate meat. And they were always healthier and taller and stronger and just, bullied and harassed all the plebeians and serfs and peasants and things like that.
Yeah.
And I mean, they could anyway. And so you weren't allowed to really eat meat. You weren't allowed to go and hunt deer. You weren't allowed to eat the cattle and all these sorts of things. So in England, they needed to hunt rabbits. There were a lot of rabbits. They were just sort of wild going around. You could sort of just catch rabbits, and that's how people supplemented their diet and were able to not die and get some animal-based nutrition, which is what they needed to live. And but if you ate too much of that and you weren't getting enough fat, they'd get this rabbit starvation, and they would be extremely hungry. They'd eat voraciously. They'd just be eating. Didn't matter how many super lean rabbits they ate. It was never enough. And then they eventually would die, if they weren't getting anything else. So, I mean, you can sort of supplement things with carbohydrates, or you can supplement things with, instead of fat, but you really need the fat. The fat's what's important. And these have essential fatty acids, essential fat soluble nutrients. And eventually you just get very sick if you're not getting those fats. Dairy plays a big role in that. Butter and cream have been a staple, especially in these poor communities where they really rely on the milk fat for survival.
Yeah. That kind of reminds me of my trip to Japan, actually. But before that, I was talking about another thing is I think a big problem with society right now is a lack of movement. You get intramuscular adipose tissue, which lowers insulin sensitivity. A lot of people don't understand that it's not just like sarcopenia, obesity. It's not just about being fat. It's about the muscle tissue as well. Ends up looking like Wagyu beef, and which lowers your insulin sensitivity. And it's very difficult to get across to people. You need to change your lifestyle. I've come across a few studies recently that prove, or they used in an obese study group, just resistance training, which increased their insulin sensitivity by 48% in some of them, which I thought was remarkable. But it again just proves to me that the lymphatic system is so important, because we need movement to push that lymph fluid around the body. But again, we just don't get enough of that in society at the moment, do we?
No. It's a bit funny. We get sicker and sicker and sicker, and we're doing what we're being told to do, and yet things are getting worse. And we're saying the solution is to do what we told you to do. That's not working very well. Do it harder and do it more. We've reduced meat, we've reduced fat, we've reduced cholesterol, we've increased fruits and vegetables, and yet people are getting worse. And and the solution for that is to do it more. Is that we're just still eating too much fat, we're still eating too much, having too much cholesterol in our diets, we're still having too much meat in our diets, and red meat in particular. And it doesn't make any sense, because it's exactly the opposite of that. We're doing what they want us to, and everything's going south. Yeah.
I mean, diet wise and movement wise, they want us all to stay home and work from home nowadays. They don't want us moving.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And we're stuck inside. We're not getting outside. We're not getting in the light. We're not able to do anything. We're just sort of prisoners in our homes or in an office building. And we're being inundated with this idea that exercise doesn't matter, the food doesn't matter, nothing matters. It's all genetics. You can't help obesity. You can't help these diseases. Unless you eat meat, obviously that's going to make it worse. Though they will say that, the people pushing Ozempic and the people pushing these weight loss drugs, saying, that lady from Stanford, the physician from Stanford, who, I don't know, I don't think there's any possible way that she could actually believe what she said. But she said that it doesn't matter if you exercise, it doesn't matter if you diet. If your genetics say you're going to be fat, you're going to be fat, and that's all there is to it. But here's this drug, and this works. Nothing else works, but this works. And I wonder what her conflicts of interest are. Would be interesting to see. And saying that 80%, and the proof of this, as she said, was that if your parents are obese, you have an 80% chance of being obese. So parents who are obese, their kids are 80% have an 80% chance of being obese themselves. That doesn't mean that it's genetic. That means that you train your kids to eat the way that you eat, and you've eaten in a way, and you've not exercised, and you've done things that have gotten you to be obese. And and most of the time it's by listening to the advice from doctors like herself, saying, you should do this, and it's actually going the opposite. And then it's really easy to then say, oh, it's just genetic, and then go, okay, thank God, because I've been doing everything right, so obviously it's not my fault. And you sort of take the onus off people, and it's just like, but you also take the power away from people, because you're saying there's nothing you can do, you can't do this, you're not good enough, and but of course you are. You actually have control over your life, and it's just a matter of getting the right information. So saying that you don't need to exercise, you don't need to do this and that, just take this pill, it really doesn't make any sense. And I don't think that they believe that themselves. It's just pushing this paradigm and trying to get people to be fat, sick, and lazy. And that's something that has been done historically to keep people under control and keep them subjected to the tyrannies of the upper class and this aristocracy. That's what everyone's trying to push back to now, trying to get back to an aristocracy and oligarchy where only a few control, and you don't have this middle class that's sort of fluid, and you can flow from lower class to upper class, which the majority of the major wealthy individuals in America have done. And so I think it was something like 4 out of 5 millionaires in America are sort of self-made. They're not inheriting that.
Well,
Bill
right.
Gates made his own fortune. And I don't like what Bill Gates is doing now, but he did that for himself.
Yeah, he didn't actually. I mean, his parents were mega rich bankers. Yeah,
but Microsoft was independent of that. You know what I mean? And so you're right. So it's not like he's like a new millionaire maybe, but the success of Microsoft was that. But it's I'm sure that afforded him some luxuries that allowed him to succeed when others wouldn't. Of course it did.
Well, he bought a like an outdated IBM software, and then he sort of updated it with some quirks from Apple and things like that. But that's just semantics. It doesn't really matter. Yeah, Bill Gates. That's like a whole other podcast.
Yeah, but, it is.
Yeah. A man with absolutely no qualifications. Vaccinating and giving dietary advice to the whole world. So whatever. Yeah,
well, and actually trying to eradicate or reduce the amount of sunlight that gets down to Earth. I mean, like every extinction event that's ever happened has been because something has kicked off a lot of dust into the sky and blocked out the sun, and that's killed off all the vegetation and animal life that depended on it, and all the way up the food chain. And so this caused mass extinctions. And this was what killed the dinosaurs, right? All the mass extinction that killed the megafauna, most likely, is one of these mass extinction events. And so, why would we want to replicate that? I mean, this is just the dumbest thing that you could ever imagine. And yet he's trying this. I think it was in Sweden, he started launching up little, whatever the hell it was. So he's like, just kick off a lot of little particulates and try to scatter this around so this would reflect the sunlight up to the back into space. Yeah, because that's what we need to do, because it wasn't like, this entire planet and all the ecosystem and every living thing on Earth has evolved and developed with the sun beating down on it all the time. No. This horrible energy is just destroying us. Okay, well, where's your solar farm going to go then if you're blocking out all the sun? I mean, pick a lane, Bill. This isn't smart.
No, it's just insane. But that gives me another good point, is the sunlight we need. We need vitamin D. Vitamin D is one of the most efficient vitamins in most people. And the best absorption is sunlight. And supplements. Supplements, I'm not real big on, especially for vitamins, because the simple fact is our lymphatic system picks up everything from the digestive tract and pushes it through the lymph fluid. Most vitamins and pills and stuff like that you take are not lipid soluble, and they break down in the stomach acid anyway. So what's your take with supplements?
You're right. A lot of supplements just get flushed down the toilet and don't end up actually getting in your system. And if you do take a vitamin D supplement, I mean, you can increase your levels, but it's fat soluble. You get better absorption if you eat it with a fatty meal, and that's can sort of protect it and help absorb it. But exactly as you say, the best way to get it is by natural sources. The vitamin D that you get from animal fats, especially grass-fed and finished ruminant meats, or marine life and things like that that are naturally fed, so they're not farm-fed fish. No, you never want farmed fish. That stuff is absolutely toxic, and it doesn't have any omega-3s, because they get their omega-3s from the other fish that they eat. Because that's a food chain. 70% of animals are carnivores, and so up and down the food chain, carnivores are eating carnivores, and so you have fish that eat 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 algae, and it's that algae and those sorts of things that have the omega-3s, and that goes up the chain to the salmon or tuna that you end up eating. So it's best to get it in its natural form. Sunlight's great, but there's like in England and that sort of latitude, 9 months out of the year, it doesn't matter how much sun exposure you get, you're not going to stimulate enough vitamin D, which is probably why the English have traditionally pretty bad teeth, because they need vitamin D3 for their teeth development, their mouth development, jaw development. And if they're not getting it from food, if they're not getting it from animal fat, they're really not getting it. And so K2 as well, that comes with animal fat. So if you are getting it from the sun, if you're lucky enough to live in a place that has good access to light, you want to get a good portion of your skin exposed to sun. I mean, we grew up evolutionarily, biologically in the sun. We're not troglodytes. They're trying to turn us into that. Stay away from the sun. Oh, stay away from this horrible, mean sun. As you can look at this throughout the 20th century, as hours of sun exposure went down, skin cancer rates went up. So there's no direct correlation. It's not even a correlation. There's an inverse correlation, right? There's an inverse relationship. So that's not to say that sun can't damage your skin or bring about cancer, but it's certainly not directly related. There's something else going on there. Let's say that sun exposure can damage your skin. Okay, well, why is it that when it's going down, skin cancer is going up? Okay, well, then something else is making this much worse. And there are a lot of things that can do that potentially. But that's another thing too. Where anytime we go in the sun, we're dumping on a bunch of sunscreen that blocks out all the UV light, and so you're not going to stimulate any vitamin D in the first place. And so that's not very helpful. And it also has things like benzene, which is a known carcinogen. And we're slathering this all over our skin and thinking thinking this is protecting us from skin cancer. We're introducing a known carcinogen to our skin, thinking that's going to help protect against skin cancer. Like, this is crazy stuff. And another thing that people don't know about vitamin D is that it's actually a good protecting against the sun. It's actually your own sunscreen, and so it sort of helps protect against UV light. UVB is what stimulates it, and so people, when they get more UVB exposure, they produce more vitamin D, which protects you against the UVB, and that's why it actually develops on the surface of your skin. And so the problem is, though, is that people go in the sun, maybe they get a bit sweating. Oh, I need to take a shower because I'm sweating. Problem with that is that the vitamin D is on your skin and it washes off. And so you wash it off with soap and water, and soap will strip all the oils off your skin. That will take the vitamin D with it. And so you actually have to let it sit on your skin for 6 to 8 hours before it'll soak in and get into your system. So there's a lot of things that go into it. But all these, and you also have to have an adequate amount of cholesterol, because vitamin D is synthesized from cholesterol. You have to have cholesterol. And so if you're eating a bunch of plant sterols that mimic cholesterol, and this is one way that doctors have said for decades, this is how you lower your cholesterol: eat some almonds and other fatty sort of plants that have a lot of plant sterols. This mimics our own cholesterol, and our body uses it instead, and it's not what it's supposed to be. So this actually can suppress your hormones, because all of our hormones are made. Vitamin D is a hormone, but all the other hormones like DHA, pregnenolone, androstenedione, testosterone, estrogen, progestogens, cortisol, all the mineralocorticoids and glucocorticoids made in our adrenals, all of these are made from cholesterol. And so you don't have enough cholesterol, or you subvert your own cholesterol with these plant sterols, and you're not getting the hormones that you need, and the hormonal response that you need, and you won't be optimal. You won't be optimally healthy, and you will also stop your body from making enough D3, and then also people wearing UV blocking sunglasses. You need that stimulus in your eyes as well, and that can trigger your body to help with the D3. So there's all these things that go into it, and it really just comes down to living naturally, just being out in the sun, not being scared of it, not showering 13 times a day, and just letting your body get on with it, and just eating what you're supposed to eat. Don't eat things that damage your body. Eat things that only promote it and help it, and that we've been well adapted to for millions of years. And it is really interesting, like all these different things, it keeps coming back to you just need to live as natural a life as you can in this very unnatural world. But there are a lot of things that you can do, and it makes a big difference.
Yeah, exactly. It'd be interesting to see that the correlation you're talking about with skin cancer going up. During that same period, though, we've also had veggie oils and soy and all that sort of stuff introduced into the diet as well. So it would be interesting to see how that would affect it, because obviously your skin, I've noticed since being just strict carnivore, skin wise heals very quickly. I've been going out and getting as sun whenever I can. I walk to the beach and I spend a couple of hours. I get a little bit red, and next day I'm tanned. And like for me, when I was younger, growing up, I always had a lot of trouble with the sun. I get really bad burns. I had 3rd-degree burns on the back of my legs when I was a kid from sunburn, because I just didn't have the right nutrition, growing up. So yeah, it'd be kind of interesting to see, I wonder if anyone's actually put that together yet, like skin cancer to diet as well. And like you said, the sun cream itself, blocking the sun, obviously is not a good thing, because you need vitamin D just helps with so much absorption of the vitamins and minerals and stuff that in your body anyway as well. And like you said, also lowers cholesterol. So blocking out or trying to keep people out of the sun, obviously they want people sick. They want them, when people are telling you to stay home, do nothing, and stay inside, when there is any kind of anything going around, shall we say, then obviously they want you sick. They want you dependent. This is the biggest thing I want people to understand is being responsible for the way you eat. It means being independent again, and being responsible for your activity, means being independent.
And I was going to say, you were talking about, the connection between skin cancer and the food we eat. I don't doubt for a second that that's a major cause of what's going on, is that we're eating things that are very pro-inflammatory, damage our metabolism, damage our mitochondria, and are very pro-cancer. Just like cancer rates in general have tripled in the last 40 years since we started eating a lot less red meat, fat, and cholesterol, and started eating a lot more fruits and vegetables and seed oils, a lot more seed oils, a lot more high fructose corn syrup and things like that, which has sort of dipped in recent years, but it did go up quite a bit. And the thing is that all of these foods, A, are damaging, A, have carcinogens, A, are metabolically dysfunctional. They will often damage the mitochondria, which is, as I'm sure you know, the theory that I feel is much more likely to be the case, which is that cancer is a mitochondrial metabolic disease, not a genetic disorder. And so you damage the mitochondria. They're all damaged. All the mitochondria are damaged in cancers. Not all cancers or cancer cells in an individual tumor have genetic changes. So, it's not, it doesn't really make sense that, if all these different cells have different genetics and different genes, and some of them are perfectly normal genetically, but they're also cancerous, then obviously it's not a genetic issue, is it? It's something else going on that's influencing it. And maybe the genetics help in some way to do something, but that's not the underlying cause. That's sort of an after effect. So all of these things damage the mitochondria. All these things damage your metabolic health, and they cause a lot of inflammation and can worsen DNA damage. So if you have a lot of inflammation and damage, just like I don't get sore after working out anymore, I also, same thing, I don't burn. I get red and then it turns tan. It doesn't get destroyed. So that redness is just blood getting to the skin, just bringing, healing factors to that area that's sort of been slightly overcooked by the sun. And then it heals and it gets better and that redness goes away. If you have a lot of inflammation and damage and your body's not working correctly, it can't correct that damage. And so it has to sacrifice those cells, and your skin ends up peeling off. Another thing is that plants have specific toxins in them that cause photosensitivity. There are a lot of these, so different animals can actually get into if they're stuck in a pasture and they sort of run out of their preferred food or forage, they might eat something else, and some of these things will make them burn horribly, make them very sick. They'll get all sorts of different diseases from this. We should get that. They're getting diseases from the different plants that they aren't normally used to eating. So do we. We get a lot of diseases and problems from eating plants that we're not designed to eat either. Well, some of these things make them very photosensitive. They get horrible just burns and rashes and blisters on their face and any sort of piece of exposed skin, or not even exposed, but just, lightly covered in hair, fur, or wool. So like a sheep's face has hair on it, but not as much as the wool on its back, and its face just gets scorched because it's just not enough to protect it because of these chemicals.
Skin cancer, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So, if you're eating these things, a class of these are called furanocoumarins. There are others that can cause you to be sensitive to UV light and cause skin damage if you're exposed to it. But furanocoumarins are in all citrus. They're in celery. They're in parsnips and many other plants. And this is something that has been known to cause second-degree burns in people when they're sort of outside, sort of like chewing on celery and the juice goes down their face. They can get chemical burns down their face because it reacts with the UV light and it damages your skin. Or squeezing limes and the juice is sort of dripping down your hand, you don't wipe it off quickly. That can scorch your hands and give chemical burns on your hands. And people have gotten second-degree burns. It's called phytophotodermatitis. People can look that up. I don't believe that. Look it up. Phytophotodermatitis or celery dermatitis. This is something that is in the literature for dermatology. And a lot of doctors don't know that because a lot of doctors aren't dermatologists or haven't looked into this like I have. So, and that's probably the only thing I know about dermatology, but, I do know that just because my research has taken me there. But, this is a fact. These chemicals exist, and they react with UV light, and they bind to proteins and DNA irreversibly, and they cause permanent damage. And so when you're eating this and ingesting this, that can go throughout, cause a systemic result, and you just get, more damaged by the sun as well. And your liver's trying to detoxify this. This is why you can't take certain medications with grapefruit, or you can't eat grapefruit if you are taking certain medications, because they have these fructoomerins which need to be detoxified by the liver. And the same enzymes that detoxify the fructoomerins in grapefruit are the same things that metabolize certain medications, right? And so, because they're really detoxifying this, your liver saying like, that's not supposed to be there. Even a medication, like, that's not supposed to be there. Get this out, get this out, get this out. And so the different enzymes break it down, P450 enzyme chain. And this is the same things that detoxify other poisons like fructoomerins. And so obviously you can get a cross sort of, cross reaction there when you get, you run out of, or cross reaction is not the right word, but you run out of some of the enzymes when you're eating grapefruit, because you're using it to detoxify the fructoomerins. And so, these are just things that just, they cause harm. And there are a lot of really interesting mechanisms to it. But at the end of the day, it doesn't matter what all the individual mechanisms are, and all the individual poisons and toxins and classifications thereof are. What matters is that you're not supposed to eat it. It's not designed to go in your body. We weren't eating this during the ice ages. We haven't been eating this historically. A lot of these foods haven't existed for over 100 years or for more than 100 years. And, the access to sugar has been, has been unprecedented. I think in the late 1800s, in America, it was something around people ate about 4 pounds of sugar a year. And now it's something like 170 pounds of sugar a year. I mean, that's insane. I mean, that's around a half a pound of sugar a day. I mean, how crazy is that?
Yeah, I think it's actually higher in Australia. Yeah, it's phenomenal amount of sugar in Australia. Absolutely amazing. There was,
I didn't even get that.
Yeah, it's just, I don't get it. I really don't. I never understood that, but it's addictive, and the biggest thing is too, people don't understand that. They think that it's just food, but they don't even know that it is an addiction. They don't know they're addicted to this stuff. I think is the biggest thing, and trying to convince them of that is, that's near impossible sometimes. Going back to cancer is a metabolic disease. I spoke to Professor Seyfried a little while ago. Just such a really nice man, just brilliant. And we were talking about intramuscular adipose tissue before. That for anyone watching, that's fat inside your muscle tissue. That it kind of gives you that Wagyu steak looking sort of muscle tissue. Okay, it makes you very weak, and it affects insulin sensitivity, makes your insulin sensitivity much lower. And I think this is another form of mitochondrial damage, or cause, or symptom, perhaps.
Well, I don't know exactly if it's cause or a symptom of specifically mitochondrial disease, but it's certainly something that can be caused by the same things that will cause mitochondrial disease. And when you're eating a lot when you have hyperglycemia, you have high blood sugar. This is directly damaging to your body. This has caused direct harm to your body. And as those little glucose molecules physically fuse to other molecules called glycation, all carbohydrates do it Fructose actually does it more than glucose. But, just your own blood sugar just being up, 1 gram is enough to start causing serious permanent damage to your body. And so your body raises insulin as a protective mechanism, I believe, to bring this down rapidly. And that high insulin really disrupts a lot of our inner workings and physiology, and interacts with all sorts of other hormones. It shuts down different properties like autophagy and mitophagy. So it stops your cells from turning over and replacing the old senile mitochondria and turning them into sort of new, healthy, younger ones. And it also slows down and turns off the epigenetic signaling factors to produce more mitochondria. So you start getting less and less and less mitochondria, and they're older, more decrepit, and broken down. And so all this cellular stress and mitochondrial stress that's being put on it by everything else, like seed oils directly damage mitochondria, for instance. These different plant toxins can directly damage mitochondria. Different genetic issues directly impede the action of mitochondria. So all these things will sort of add up eventually, and then you get very dysfunctional mitochondria. The intramuscular fat, like human marbling, it's called myosteatosis. And this is something that's just, if you look at MRIs all day, like I do, and many other doctors do, it's something that you see more and more and more. It's just a very, very regular finding now, that I certainly see, and I certainly pay attention to. And it's just so normal. It's just like, oh yeah, that's what that is. But people aren't looking at it that's like, ooh, that's bad. I look at it because I think that's bad. It's also associated with visceral fat, which is also metabolically active, which is also directly related to mitochondrial dysfunction, metabolic dysfunction. And so it is certainly a good marker of poor metabolic health. And that comes from high insulin depositing fat in the muscles and in glycogen and in your fat stores, because you have this high blood sugar, and that's directly damaging your body, and your insulin goes up to just stuff this in every orifice that it can. And part of that is it becomes fat in your muscles. And so it's all part of that whole disease process.
Yeah. So, because I heard recently that this is the cause of all these illnesses, but I completely disagree. It has to be the diet. It's the diet that causes that symptom.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. No, you don't just get that. Unless you feed cows a bunch of grain, they don't get marbling like that. Like, I mean, there's some are genetically designed to have some marbling, but you really bring it out with the carbs. You give them carbs and grain and things like that. Same thing with us.
Yeah, it's completely down the line. Again, like there's first off, mitochondrial disease. I'm the only one in my family, and the first one in my family to get cancer. So, to me, it's not a genetic thing. My grandparents never had it. Actually, my grandfather did, but he was a smoker, and heavy drinker. So he had those sort of related cancers. But everyone else in my family, I've had the healthiest diet according to diet guidelines out of all my family, and I'm the one that got sick. So that was a kick in the pants. But so I just completely disagree with the whole genetic argument. It's complete BS.
Well, it couldn't be. I was just going to say, if it were completely genetic, then how could it have tripled in the last, 30, 40 years?
It would stay constant. It would stay in the same family line,
It would stay in the same family line, and it would also stay the same as far as your population percentages, right? Because if people have studied genetics and population genetics, it's like the Harvey Weinberg formula, I believe. And that if you have a gene or an allele or something like that, in a population, a certain percentage have this gene or allele, that is, or the set of alleles, like that stays constant, unless you have like a mass extinction or a mass immigration of new genetic stock. It stays the same. So it has to stay the same. As the population grows, it stays the same as a percentage of that population, of the genetic population and the genetic pool. So if it is genetic, then it won't increase like that. So it has to be, there has to be an environmental component. It has to be.
Yeah. I mean, it has to be. I mean, it has to be a diet related thing, because we just, it's just too convenient that, all these manufactured foods show up, and but it's not their fault. It's it's genetics all of a sudden.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Even like the health food industry, these seed oils are absolutely everywhere. They're predominantly soy. I know in the 70s there was a study done on packaging that contained seed oil, soy oil, soy protein oil, because the packaging, they were worried about it flaking off and getting into the food supply because it is a carcinogenic. And now it's in everything, even protein powders, protein bars, all your fitness industry sort of foods. And I did a trip to Costco a couple of weeks back, and the entire line of jerky meats, they had was it beef and pork, all these different varieties, and every single one of them were enhanced with soy protein. I'm just thinking, why would meat require soy protein to increase protein?
Yeah.
So, I mean, it should. I mean, that should set off alarm bells. That right there. I mean, obviously that they want you. They want some sort of effect from this. All right. It just seems crazy. Of course.
Well, it seems a bit strange, that we are dumping things into products that, I mean, why do we need soy protein in a meat product? I mean, what is the point of that? They're going out of their way to add an extra ingredient and buy and source something. I guess soy sauce could help with it, and maybe they just sort of, soy protein, maybe it's like a sort of a marketing thing. But it's hard to say, and it's hard to say why we feel that we need all these different ingredients. In the U.S., someone did a comparison between Heinz ketchup in the U.S. and Heinz ketchup in Canada. Same bottle, same brand, and in Canada there were 5 ingredients, basically sort of more real ingredients that you sort of recognize the names of. And in America, it was like 30-something ingredients, and most of them were like weird chemical names that you have no idea how to pronounce them. So it's very strange. And there's a lot of things that we put in food in certain countries that other countries ban and say, this is illegal. You can't put this in here. That's toxic. So I don't know what the motivations are. I don't know what people are doing. Maybe they're just, of the opinion that it doesn't matter what chemicals you put in this, as long as it tastes good and lasts long. It's okay. It's not going to cause harm, because it has these nutrients, and nutrients are good, and there's nothing bad, and you can just eat anything and it'll be good as long as it has nutrients in it. Well, nutrients are great, but poison is not. And so you put things in there and that are going to harm you, and it doesn't matter what the nutrient profile is, because you're going to get the harm at that point. So you want to eat things that are nutrient dense, that don't have these harmful things in them, and certainly don't want to put anything in your mouth that you can't even pronounce the name of it. And just look and just be smart about what you're buying. You want whole foods. You don't want a bunch of processed junk, meat or otherwise. Most processed foods are plant-based. And so it's and they have all these, and there's not even whole food plants. It's just all tons of different random chemicals and other plants and soy products and isolates and sugar and seed oils and just a lot of things that you don't want. A simple principle is that our biology has stayed pretty static for the last 300,000 years. So why are we putting anything in our body that hasn't existed for 300,000 years? Why are we putting anything in our body that's only come around last year or in the last century? It's probably not a good idea. Maybe it's fine. Maybe it's neutral, but you have no idea. You have absolutely no idea. And if it's If it is something that isn't neutral, then you know that you haven't had time to adapt to it. And individuals don't adapt genetically. They can build up tolerances to certain toxins, but that's different. You build up a tolerance to alcohol. That doesn't mean you're not being damaged by alcohol and all of a sudden it's good for you now. No, you are being damaged by it. It's just that, your body's desperately trying to protect you against this thing that you are continuing to expose yourself to. Same goes for all of these foods that are not food. They're really not. That's not food. Just because you eat it doesn't mean it's food. You can eat dirt and get some minerals out of that. That doesn't mean it's food. So, food is very species specific, and our species specific food is meat. And even if you're eating plants, I mean, a lot of these plants are completely new creations that we've hybridized and bred and cultivated and even just changed genetically recently. So, if we haven't had access to this plant for 10,000 years or 100,000 years, why are you eating it? It shouldn't. If the plant didn't even exist 50,000 years ago, like, why are you eating that plant? You say that this plant is good for you, okay, or certain plants are good for you, fine. Which plants, right? If it's a plant that like we've never eaten as a population until very recently, we have not developed an immunity to it. We have not developed a resistance to it, and so you shouldn't eat it.
Yeah, no, exactly. I mean, people call a carnivore diet a fad diet, but honestly, the last 100 years has been the fad diet, the standard American or now Western diet.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, they call like a carnivore diet like a fad diet, but a fad diet is something that comes and goes. Right. It's just like, oh, it's a flash in the pan and, had high hopes and it didn't work out. It's just a fad. No, what we've evolved to eat and what we've been eating for 2 million years is by definition not a fad. The processed food and junk that we've been eating now, that's the fad. And it's a bad one. It's a really dumb one. And so we need to put that into a former fad as quickly as possible.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I agree. Actually, I just came back from Japan last a couple of weeks ago. Yeah. You were talking about ingredients. 50%, go to a supermarket in Japan, 50% of it is meat.
Yeah.
Whereas here it's like 2%. I pick up a block of butter. There's 2 ingredients: raw milk and salt. That's it. That was the butter. Raw milk and salt. That was it. You can't. Raw dairy products in Australia are illegal. They have to be pasteurized and all. It was sort of garbage. Raw milk is just standard supermarket stuff. Raw dairy in Japan is absolutely brilliant. And like absolutely any kind of meat you can think of, and a lot that you can't think of in a supermarket in Japan. It's brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. I read a lot of these chemical words in parentheses to me, meaning that certain ingredients is made of like maybe listing constituents of tomato sauce that some people may be sensitive to. I think that's the same like you were saying before. Some people build up a tolerance to these foods, but they still being damaged. To all these chemicals. Obviously, like we've been fed this ultra processed garbage since birth, pretty much. So we build up a tolerance. If we survive to adulthood, we build up a tolerance. But as you said, we still get the damage.
Yeah, I think what she's saying there is, are they listing out some of the chemicals that exist in tomatoes that you might be sensitive to? No, I don't think that's what it is. They're adding things to that. So anything in the ingredients list is something they've added to that. So one of the ingredients would be tomatoes, and then sugar and high fructose corn syrup and a lot of other things. And so if there are a lot of different random chemicals, I mean, there are chemicals in tomatoes that are bad for you, right? Yeah. And they're a nightshade and they have solanine, and if they're not picked ripe, if it's not vine ripe in tomatoes, they keep a lot of that solanine and those toxins in there. They're picked green almost always because that's how you ship these things. And so it's, it's much more toxic. They have a much higher toxic load. So that's its own thing though. Tomatoes just on their own, you should look at that and be like, bad for you. And then all the other ingredients are other things that are bad for you as well.
Yeah, they're highly acidic too. You try
Potentially bad for you.
Yeah, you put a bit of tomato juice on a cut, you'll feel it. Dr. Anthony, would it be possible if I contact you and give you my GP's phone number? He is a big fan of you, and he's helped me so much. I'd like to do something just as a thank you. Well, that's very nice.
Oh, that's really nice. Yeah. Well, I'm glad they've helped. Yeah. Well, look, I have an email available. It's just anthonychaffee@gmail.com that, people can, it's really for people contacting me for things like this, where, for doing podcasts or something like that. But if you wanted to email me there, you could. I don't know if I'd be able to just sort of cold call him, but if you wanted to sort of give him my email, I'd be happy to correspond with him. That'd be great.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree, Annabella. Yeah, his content has been absolutely brilliant. Yeah.
Well, thank you. That's really nice. I'm glad that's helped.
Well, it has. It's helped, so many people, and it will continue to, because it's, like you said, it is the proper human diet. And, I can attest to this myself. With follicular lymphoma, it's a reoccurring sort of cancer that just stays with you apparently for the rest of your life, according to the experts. And basically, when they told me I had this, they basically just told me that it's a recurring cancer. You basically, if you survive treatment the rest of your life, you're just going to need more and more treatment. The more treatment you get, the shorter the remission period, and the more aggressive it becomes. So
yeah,
you're basically living from blood test to blood test, and it's kind of hard to get your head around. It took me a long time, but I'm in remission. I've been in remission for 9 years on a low carb diet, now strict carnivore. It's not just the cancer that I'm getting on top of, it's the side effects of 3 years solid chemotherapy that absolutely just cooked me inside out. I was literally cooked, and everything was just mush, like passing so much skin and things like that. My brain was mush for many years. So, what this has done for me is rebuilt my body and my mind, my mental clarity. It's not 100% all the time, but it is getting better. And I can feel that. I think it's absolutely amazing.
Good.
So people like you and Dr. Baker and Cam Berry, you're saving a lot of lives, and more than this. This is the only, I think, one of the best things, or probably the best thing about social media, is that you can do this. You have a platform to do this. If it was, back in the 80s or something like that, just reading books, it just wouldn't get, the message just would not get out there,
Yeah, true.
Yeah, it's been absolutely amazing. So, this is another thing. We're talking about people dying from infections, basically because your immune system is destroyed going through chemotherapy. This is another thing that kills me. I'm going on a bit of a tangent, I guess, but they put you on so many steroids, that basically break down your body with the chemotherapy and put you on a heap of steroids, which feed the cancer, builds up your blood sugar and whatnot. So they're pretty much just killing the body, feeding the cancer, and expecting you to survive, which is just nuts to me. But it is what it is at the moment, and we're trying to change that. Infections to me were, it was paramount. Everything, basically lived in a bubble, and every time my wife went out anywhere or I went out anywhere, we scrubbed down. When we came home, we showered, and we everything in the apartment was wiped down with alcohol pretty much on an almost daily basis. After the chemotherapy, my bed sheets, and had to be washed separately to my wife's, and it was every day, every single day. This is what it was like for years, and I'd still get an infection, and a cold would almost kill me. Since being on Carnivore, since being in remission, actually, even on a ketogenic low carb diet, I would still get colds and flus that would last me months. I went back to the gym. It took me, so I did 3 years solid of chemotherapy. Then I spent another 2.5 years before I could really walk again. After the transplant, my body was completely destroyed. I just could not move. And it took me 2.5 years to start walking again. And then from there, another 2.5 years after that, I went back to the gym. Actually, it was longer than that, about 4 years, 4.5 years. But even going back to the gym, I was feeling good. I was doing okay. I was on a low carb diet, but my immune system was still pretty shot, and a cold would last me months. On Carnivore, strict Carnivore, a cold would last me 2 days. I got in the first 3 months. I felt a cold coming on. You feel all the mucus and everything coming on. I started eating just straight fat, like a snack. I just fry up a couple of 100 grams of fat, just diced up, just beef fat. And I didn't stop moving. I kept going to the gym. I kept training. I kept exercising. And 2 days later, it was gone. To go from months in bed with a cold, or even worse, if I got a flu, if the infection progressed, sometimes it lasted up to 6 months, to 2 days is just, it's phenomenal. It's and without having to stop exercising, I just find that absolutely remarkable.
Yeah, well, that's amazing, and it's absolutely fantastic that your immune system has improved that much. It is something that I've noticed for myself. I would get colds quite regularly, once or twice a month at least, and then pneumonia at least once a year, if not 2 or 3 times a year, actually confirmed on chest X-ray. So that's all gone. I don't get any of these. I never get colds. I never get pneumonia. I don't get very sick when I'm around people with the flu. I really haven't been sick. I think I've gotten one flu when I came to Australia, and I just I haven't been exposed to any of the sort of the strains of flu here, and it sort of just caught me a bit unexpectedly, but I was fine, and and that was it. During the whole COVID season, I think I was down for sort of a better part of a day. I felt pretty poorly, sort of later in the afternoon, and then just sort of slept through till the next day, and then sort of later on that day, on the following day, started feeling better, and then I was just tired for a week and had some neck pain, and that was pretty much it. So I haven't experienced illness like I normally have, and that's even something that Dr. Salisbury noticed in the 1800s, that people going on a pure red meat and water diet weren't getting the autoimmune issues that they had before, and were putting them into remission, even though there were no medications that could actually help these people. And he also found that this could actually help people recover from tuberculosis, which was a major killer infectious disease at the time, and still is around the world in different endemic places. So
at the time in America, that was pretty much like the European plague at the time.
It killed a lot of people. My great grandfather was a doctor in New York. He went to Columbia Medical School, and he and his sort of friends from medical school, got tuberculosis. I think they were sharing an apartment when they were sort of doing residency or shortly after residency, and they sort of caught it, from like their superintendent, who was just sort of hacking and coughing and like spitting gobs of stuff on the floor apparently. And then they all got sick. They all got TB, and he was able to afford to go down to the Redlands, which is like a tuberculosis recovery sort of sanitarium place. They just sort of sit you out in the sunshine all day and just try to dry you out, get dry, arid air, breathing that in, being in the sun and just taking it easy and just trying to recover. And he was able to recover. Unfortunately, his roommates and friends from medical school weren't. They all died. And so it was a major killer of the time. And Salisbury found that just putting people on a proper diet of red meat and water diet, and people were recovering much more easily from tuberculosis. And so, we see this immune regulation is pretty significant when you go full carnivore, and you not even just keto. It's not just the carbs that are doing it. It's everything, and all of these things can play a role in damaging your immune function and health. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, it's been absolutely remarkable. I mean, it's been mind-blowing actually, in a lot of ways. Question I should ask: can carnivore raise your red blood cell count?
Yeah, it definitely can. I mean, it depends on if that's what your body wants to do, but most people are low in B12, folate, iron, and a lot of other factors that go into proper erythrocyte formation, and health and longevity, and even just getting rid of those plant sterols that I talked about before. The lipid bilayer that makes up the cell membrane of all of our cells, and in particular our red blood cells, is predominantly cholesterol. And so you start using those plant sterols and start sticking them in where cholesterol is supposed to go, and it just causes a mess. And so those red blood cells actually get sort of stuffed up with plant sterols, and they end up dying earlier. They're supposed to last around 3 months or more on average, and the plant sterols can make them die before that. And so that can start dropping your blood count as well. And so you start just getting out all the little anchors and chains that are in your way to slow you down, and provide all the nutritional components that you need to make proper red blood cell, and it will go up. Yeah, for most people. I mean, other people can have underlying issues that it may not directly affect, but for most people it will improve that, especially if they're anemic for those reasons.
I suppose it's depending on, I guess you're right, depending on what their underlying effects or problems are, right? I guess it's going to improve any situation for anyone, really. So along with vitamin B, what supplements would you recommend for anyone, let me see, fighting cancer, going through treatment?
Well, I mean, the main thing is just getting proper nutrition, and generally proper nutrition will provide all the nutrients that you need. You want to make sure that you have enough, B12 and folate and things like that. Even on a carnivore diet, some people don't absorb things as well as they could or should, or they have MTHFR gene mutation, so they'll need a bit more folate. So really the only supplement that you need on a carnivore diet is just proper meat and liver. Liver is the carnivore supplement. I mean, it's just so nutrient dense. It's just so packed with vitamins, minerals, and nutrients that if you're ever sort of deficient in something, you should start adding in some of the organs like liver, heart, kidney, spleen, all these, pancreas, all these different sorts of things that have such density of nutrients. You don't need a massive amount, because they are dense, and so they can be too much. Too much is too much, and so you want enough of these things. And so just adding in the organs, that's really the supplements that you need. Now there are specific chemo agents that can sap your body of specific nutrients, And so if you are on one of those things, you need to be very careful that you're not getting deficient in that specific nutrient. And if you're not getting everything you need from, say, liver or another organ, then supplementing, focused supplementation with that specific vitamin or mineral is is the right way to go.
Yeah. Again, be careful with. I think. Correct me if I'm wrong, but you need to find vitamins that are lipid soluble. Most of the like shelf bought sort of vitamins and things like that, it just gets broken down the stomach, and it's just wasted.
Well, they're lipid soluble. Yeah, there's fat soluble and water soluble vitamins. So there's a mix. Yeah. But the best thing is that, I mean, the thing is you take it in a pill form, and you're right, it may not actually make it into your body. It could get degraded or just not absorbed. Sometimes they're not even in the right form. They're just like close enough that they can put it on the label and sell it to you, but it's actually not the right chemical. Iron, I mean, this is like some iron supplements actually have like actual iron in it. It's not like molecule that you can actually absorb. It's iron filings, right? You're not absorbing that, right? So it just says iron, but it's not bioavailable. And so you need to find a supplement that has high bioavailability, definitely.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Okay, my red blood cell count is above normal, and I wasn't dehydrated.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the thing is that, I mean, there are a number of things that can raise your red blood cell count. I mean, it could be also that if you go, and I'm assuming you're saying that you're going on carnivore and then your red blood cell went up. I mean, that's not necessarily a bad thing. It's, our ranges are the averages for the community. And so it's, is the case that most people in the community are sick and malnourished and things like that. So it's not necessarily the case that being a little bit above is necessarily a bad thing. A lot of the vitamins, minerals, and hormones that we test for, the reference ranges are way too low. And that's not actually indicative of the reference range for good health, optimal health. There are a number of reasons where you can have higher levels of hemoglobin, though. Just living at altitude increases your hemoglobin. And so, people that live, slightly above other people, they'll have more hemoglobin. Smoking, I'm guessing if someone's here and interested in carnivore diet and optimal health, they're probably not smoking, but that's, one of the other things as well. You're just restricting the amount of oxygen that's getting in your body, and your body has to compensate by increasing the number of red blood cells in your body. You can do that also by training with oxygen restriction, masks and things like that while you're training. And that can stimulate your red blood cells as well. So it's not necessarily a bad thing. I mean, if there's other problems, then, see a doctor and get it checked out, but it's not necessarily a bad thing.
Yeah, athletes do that. Like professional cyclists in Europe, they all live at high altitude to try and increase their VO2 max. So, it's not something you really need to worry or be concerned about. And I wouldn't concern myself about one blood test either. There's a lot of different factors. If, like, for example, if I have a blood test coming up, I'll take a couple of days off because off the gym, because like if you train the day before, your blood markers are all over the place.
True.
So,
yeah, you have to be pretty sedate for a few days before the blood test, and abstain from exercise or sexual activity the morning of and the day before your blood test. Yeah.
Last year I did a test. I went to the gym, and straight after the gym I went and did a blood test. And I'm thinking, my oncologist looked at me and he's like, "Oh my God, everything's just dropped. Everything's bottomed out. I don't know what's happening here." I'm like, "Okay, this is great." I'm just thinking, it sort of stressed me out for a week, and I sort of figured it out. It's just, I shouldn't have gone to the gym, but oh well, it was funny. It was just one.
Yeah. I should say I do need to head out, so we'll probably do like one more question. Then I've got to run.
Okay, yeah, sorry. I didn't realize how late it was. I'm just enjoying the conversation.
Yeah,
sorry
no, definitely. That's okay.
Okay, so Actually, that's a good question. Why did you come to Australia? Why did you move to Australia?
Kangaroos mostly. Just thought it'd be
Yeah.
fun. So, yeah. Well, it's just, it's a very unique continent. It's a very unique place, very unique, sort of geological history, and the native Australians have very unique culture. The animals are very unique. Obviously, they don't exist anywhere else in the world, some of them. And so I was very interested in that, but I was also interested from a rugby point of view. I grew up playing rugby, absolutely loved it. And I'd been to New Zealand with the USA junior national team, U19 national team, and absolutely loved that. Wanted to get to Australia, but just never quite made it over here to play. I had friends that played over here, actually in Brisbane, and they absolutely loved it. So, I had friends that ended up over here that were doctors, or some of the guys that I played rugby with ended up over here as well, and they just thought it was great. And so I had taken time off. I sort of left my training program after medical school to help with a family emergency and help with sort of my parents' health. And once I finished that, I was doing humanitarian work and in Bangladesh, and then I was sort of looking around. Okay, where do I want to go back and finish residency? And I just thought, why not come to Australia and check it out? And so I made it down to Perth because it said it had the most sunny days of any of major city in Australia. And I was sick of the rain in Seattle and England and Ireland. I was like, yep, I just need sunshine. So that's why I came down.
I should have come to Brisbane.
I know. Yeah. There's a lot of, that whole sort of tropical weather I think I would have really liked. I mean, I like it down here. I like the weather in Perth, but like the winters are way colder than I was expecting. So, I mean, I think I would have, I think that the tropical sort of weather would have appealed to me for sure.
Yeah. We still walk around in t-shirt and shorts in winter here. So,
Yeah, that's awesome.
Nice. Yeah. It's quite lovely.
Yeah.
Especially you live where I am, like just a 10-minute walk to the beach. Everything's good. So
definitely.
So, all right, guys, awesome. We're going to have to leave it there. I'm going to thank Dr. Anthony Chaffee for his time, and took up quite a lot of the time. Sorry about that. I was just enjoying the conversation.
Yeah, no, me too.
Completely forgot about it. Okay, so thanks everyone for coming along and watching, and hopefully we can do this again sometime. That would be really awesome. Yeah,
that'd be great. Sounds good, man.
All right, let's drop out here and stream. There we go.